Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today, we are joined by Sarah Bond with liveeatlearn.com, a very popular food blog. She gets over 1 million visitors per month and makes over $30,000 a month from this blog. She joins us today to talk about the entire story and process behind how she does this. I think there's a couple things you'll probably find very interesting that Sarah goes through in the interview. Number one, her process for writing content, but really more coming up with the topics. It's a different approach than I've ever heard before. It really plays into this concept of topical authority. And I think you'll really be intrigued by the way she thinks about the topics that she's going to write about and then kind of how that ends up playing itself out on her blog and how it turns into a lot of page views. We talk about her quick process for updating content. She updates about 10 articles per day in addition to publishing new content. Now, obviously, when you hear that, you know that it has to be a quick process to be able to update that many. And she shares exactly what she does. It's very simple, I have to say, but sometimes there's brilliance in simplicity. I certainly want to go take some of those ideas and put them into practice. She also shares a lot of things about, how she comes up with the topic she's going to write about, how she's implementing some EEAT items, email marketing and her success that she's had there, backlink building, where she's gotten all of her backlinks to get her to what is a DR70 site now at this point, and a lot more. Lots to learn, and certainly enjoyed this interview. We haven't talked about a food-specific blog in a long time, but even if you don't have a food blog, there's a lot you can learn. Like I said, I'm certainly going to take her quick content updating strategy and put it into play. So I hope you enjoy. Listen in. Before we jump into the podcast, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
What a masterpiece PR link building campaign. With 20 links in big publications such as The Sun, Express, Mirror, Wales Online, and still landing, I would say this campaign is a massive success. We told the press that people should turn on their heating this summer if they want to save money next winter. And we landed over 20 links in national and regional UK publications for our boiler client. That's crazy. The campaign hook was pretty clever. It is a known fact, at least in the boiler trade, that if you keep your boiler off for many months, it might rust and it might get you into trouble if you keep it turned off from spring to next winter. We therefore advise the press, with an expert commentary piece, on behalf of our boiler client, that people should turn on their boilers this summer just when the heat wave is in full swing. This way they can avoid a boiler failure next winter and save money. Massive publications picked up our story, including The Sun, Express, Mirror, Wales Online, and a few more dozen publications, giving our client links, lots of links, and lots of happiness hormones. No wonder that so many journalists covered our story, as this headline is a massive link magnet to their audience. This case study highlights the fact that a clever hook can be applied to any insight or story to make a campaign more successful and more compelling to journalists. Can you imagine when people see this headline in the news, "You should turn on your boiler this summer"? There's no way they would not click on it. I would click on it. So this was the hook, and this is why this campaign was so successful. I hope this video inspires and shows you what's possible with a clever hook.
If you want similar link building PR campaigns for your website, head to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them now. All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Today we are joined by Sarah Bond with liveeatlearn.com. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey, nice to be here.
It is great to have you. I feel like I already know a bit of the direction of today, just because you've done a blog post, an interview with nichepursuits.com, and it did very well. People had a lot of questions. We wanted to bring you onto the podcast to talk all about some of the things you shared. Why don't you give us some backstory on yourself, like we like to do, learn a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into the websites you have and, kind of what you're doing with those right now.
Yeah. So I'm Sarah. I run the food blog Live, Eat, Learn. I started the food blog in January of 2015. I started it really as a business. I knew from the get-go that this is something people could make an income from. at the time, Pinch of Yum was doing their income reports. So I was like poring over those every month and really just sorting, like getting like the entrepreneurial like desire to turn this into something. But it was also very much a creative side hustle. I had studied nutrition for my bachelor's at Penn State. So I knew all about like the science of food, but I really didn't know how to cook. So I started the blog sort of as a way to document my process of learning how to cook. And to do that, I would every week have a featured ingredient. So I'd go to the grocery store and pick out an ingredient and then just cook with it for the week. And that was like my way of sort of figuring out how to cook and documenting the whole thing. So obviously now it's 8 years later. And I do know how to cook now, but that is still sort of the core of Live, Eat, Learn. Yeah, now I do. Some of the old recipes definitely need some updating because back when I didn't know how to cook, it was a little rough. But yeah, so that core basically is still how Live, Eat, Learn operates. So every week we have a featured ingredient, and then I'll show people how to cook with that ingredient. What was I going to say? Oh, in January of 2016, so a year later, is when I got into Mediavine. So that's when things really became a business. That's also about the time that I started studying for my master's in sensory science, which is basically the study of food as it relates to the senses. So my goal after graduating was really to have a real job in the food industry. But I had been working on Live, Eat, Learn sort of in the margins of time while I was studying. So when it came time to graduate and like get a real job, I thought I could, do that, like work in the food industry, or I could put these 40 hours a week that I'd been studying, or I could go to a job, or I could just put that all into the website. So I went full time with the blog in 2018. And that's when things really started to snowball. So obviously in 2020, everyone started eating at home and stopped going to restaurants and wanted to learn how to cook. And that's when things really exploded for the food blog. So along the way, I started my two niche sites, brewbooch.com, which is all about kombucha brewing, and Bon Appetit, which is my dog food site. And here we are today.
Well, I have to ask out of the gate, because 2015 was a very different world for blogging, for websites. I mean, I don't want to assume, but certainly a lot of the success of food blogs from like 2015, maybe to today, but certainly like all the way to about 2020 was on, say, Pinterest and social media, Facebook groups, these kind of things. Like, how much traffic were you driving from social media in the first couple of years? And then maybe what does it look like today? Has it changed much?
It was definitely very Pinterest heavy in the beginning. Things just changed so much. So back then it was all about like the boards you were on and the group boards you were on. So I had a few pins go viral. So I had like a recipe that is not even Googleable really, because it doesn't have any like major keywords, but that one like went viral on Pinterest because people see the photo and they like it. So that really helped to propel Live, Eat, Learn. And then sort of on the SEO side of things, my kombucha recipe sort of just accidentally went viral, and that was very Googleable. So that really helped, I think, start to build that SEO traction. Whereas it used to be really very Pinterest heavy, SEO is now like my bread and butter. Pinterest is not really even something I think about anymore.
Right. I have a couple questions for you about that, but I'll save that for a bit later. You shared some of the numbers in the blog post, but I'd like to ask where the sites are at now. I like to ask at the beginning of the interview, because that kind of gives people some framework, and kind of whatever numbers you're comfortable sharing, whether it's revenue or traffic or anything like that. And then we can kind of dive into how you grew these sites.
Yeah. So Live, Eat, Learn is getting, trying to think. We're getting about 1.2 million visitors a month. And then the niche sites are much smaller. So Brew Booch is about 3 years old at this point. So that one's hard because it really kind of caps out. Like there's only so much you can write about kombucha. So that one's kind of capped. That one makes probably $3,000 a month. And then Bon Appetit is the dog site. I just started that last year. So that's making probably $500 a month. So Live, Eat, Learn is definitely like our shining star, but yeah.
That's nice. Great. 1.1 million page views. If you don't mind, how much, roughly is that making?
Between like 35 to 40,000 a month.
And is that mostly ads? You're on Mediavine? Is it? Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly ads, like very little Amazon Associates. And then I have some digital products I sell, but it's by and far ads.
Man, congratulations. That is a lot of, that's a lot for someone who wasn't even planning on taking their blog full time.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how you grew the site. Here's what I want to do. I want to ask you about, to kick us off, like you mentioned it, COVID put this site into like a new trajectory, right? Mm-hmm. And it changed the way that the site was going. Where was it at the start of 2020? You know, and then what kind of changed in terms of post 2020, post COVID, all that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of like, obviously, like I think like a lot of people on Mediavine, they'll go into their dashboard every morning and see what they're making. So that's really like what I can remember from that time is I was making like maybe $500 a day. And then COVID happened, and I don't know how other people's sites are like, but for a food blog, it's very much on a Sunday. Like you have this huge peak because everyone's planning their recipes for the week. And then it's kind of like a heartbeat every week. And so you can see like this very predictable, you know, like heartbeat of the site. And when COVID happened, like days of the week didn't matter. So it was like we just skyrocketed. And then it just was this like steady line for probably 3 months. And in that time, that's when we started hitting like $1,000 days and $1,200 days. And it hasn't really come back from that. So that's been pretty awesome. And I have changed my content strategy a little bit as I've started having more funds to hire people and, you know, like hire like SEO strategists. And that's really helped to sort of keep this future proof. And like, once people go back to their usual patterns, like to keep that sort of energy and momentum going.
Well, it's been quite a few years since 2020. I don't know. You might have landed on the new pattern, right? Yeah. So you talked about your content strategy. Let's get into it. How do you, and I'm really curious because the way you said you go about kind of picking the topics is definitely not something I've heard. And I've interviewed a lot of food bloggers over the years and listened to a lot of interviews. Like you pick a menu item or an ingredient and that becomes the content for the week. Like, let's unpack that. What does that look like in terms of the, you know, getting into the nitty gritty? How do you pick the topics? How do you then take, say, an ingredient and turn it into a number of articles and recipes? Like, I'm just really curious to dig deep on this so people can learn. Yeah,
I will say it wasn't very intentional until probably about a year ago. Before it was just like, this ingredient looks fun. Let's see what we can do with it. It has morphed into like really topical clustering. So when I pick an ingredient now, it's very intentional. So like chickpeas is for a vegetarian food site. Like obviously you're looking at like your beans and things and your meat alternatives. So chickpeas is a cluster that I'm really trying to build out. So if I can see that there's like a cluster that needs more posts, more recipes, more information, or like just some more to be complete, then I'll pick that featured ingredient to sort of build out that cluster. And what I mean by cluster is like, I want Google to know that I'm the authority in this thing. So for me, it really has turned into like these ingredient central clusters. So it's like chickpea recipes, very easy. Like what can you do with chickpeas, how to roast chickpeas, how to air fry chickpeas, but then also like informational things like what are the nutrition facts for chickpeas and how do you store chickpeas? So really going deeper than just the recipe, which is what I think traditional food blogging is really just the recipes. And how can I build a whole cluster around that to sort of support that recipe content?
Do you write each of those individually? And how do you determine what to write and what to include? Like a lot of food bloggers, like you said, will say, hey, here's a chickpea salad. And then, you know, why are chickpeas great? And, you know, the nutritional benefits of chickpeas or, you know, those, and they'll include those in the article. Are you kind of splitting that content up? Like talk about that.
Yeah. I found that Google they're going to surface the articles that are solely about that topic. So it does feel almost a little redundant sometimes to have a whole article on like how to freeze chickpeas. But if you go to Google, typically it's the articles that are solely about that topic that are ranking. So that's usually what we do.
How many articles do you now have on your site? I'm just trying to do the math on this.
I think I'm at like 1,300 on Live, Eat, Learn.
That's a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
What is like, what percentage of recipe posts do you think you have in comparison to all these other types of posts?
It's definitely mostly recipes. But I guess as we keep going, the content calendar is about half recipes now, half informational or like posts that are supposed to build up these clusters. So right now the content calendar is I'll do 2 new recipes a week. And that's all by me. So like I do all the recipe development and the photography and the writing for those. Just because I want to remain central to the site. I want people to see my face and know like Sarah from Live Eat Learn is making that. It's not like a stock photo. It's not AI. Like this is a real person. And then I have a small team who helps me with the how-to articles and then like informational articles.
When it comes to your traffic, like if you were to, look at a snapshot, and I didn't ask you this ahead of time, so give me just your gut. But if you're looking at like a snapshot of traffic, does most of it end up on the recipe posts and the informational content is there to kind of like what you talk about, support, build out topical authority, these sorts of things? Or, is it more split evenly, 50-50?
It's pretty weighted towards the recipes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say of my top 10 posts, 8 are recipes and then 2 are informational.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right.
Yeah.
So recipes still drive the majority of traffic.
Yeah.
I'll ask now, just because I'm curious on your opinion on it. Social traffic has changed so much for everyone. Pinterest, Facebook, the organic reach of these platforms is, I'm not spoiling anything here by saying it's changed a lot. Some people have continued to focus on it anyways, even if it doesn't drive as much business as it used to. Others have kind of left it almost for dead. Sounds like you're more the latter. When did it start to go? Why did you decide maybe not to continue to pursue it as much? I'm just, it's such a tough topic, especially in the food niche.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one. So Live Eat Learn has never had like a crazy following on social media. But we definitely do like keep up with it. And sort of the way that I recently have come to terms with, I do need to post on these platforms still so I can have like a face to this brand that I've created, is I'll repurpose content like crazy. So every recipe that I make has a video with it, and I'll shoot it vertical so I can have it for all the social media platforms. So I can have it on TikTok and Instagram Reels and Facebook and YouTube. But then I will do like auto captions on the side. So I'll voice over it, and then I'll have like on a YouTube video, let's say it's horizontal, I'll have like the left square of it being the cropped vertical video, and then I'll do auto captions on the right. And obviously that's not like the dream YouTube video, but it is something that I can put in that recipe post to sort of keep people's engagement on it. Mm-hmm. So when they're scrolling, they can see like a video of me like making it, eating it. And those, they don't do well on YouTube, but they keep people on the page. And that's what I'm looking for, is just sort of creating this complete recipe post that has like step-by-step photos, but also has this video that I've repurposed from social. So obviously in a perfect world, I think I would have like a legit YouTube video with like horizontal and like the studio and everything. But as it is now, that's sort of the way that I can justify spending time on social media still, because it's still something that I can use to keep people on the website, which is the end goal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting to hear you talk about video. I'll have a couple questions for you on that as well. Okay, so let's talk about how you build out content. Let's talk about, you still do all the recipes yourself, and you used a term I haven't heard before. I like it. Recipe development. That's kind of a topic that I think does come up quite a bit in the food niche, which is the idea of recipes and how unique they need to be and how different they need to be and all that. I mean, you have a background in this. You went to college and I believe have a master's for it. Mm-hmm. Talk about recipe development. Like, what does that look like, and why is it still in your camp?
Well, so I think this is a tough one. So I think that people come to food blogs because they stick with food blogs. They find ones they like because they like the flavors of that person makes. They like the ingredients they use. They like generally how things turn out. Like they like that they'll use certain ingredients over others. It's sort of like people get the flavor for your food, and they can expect a certain way of cooking from you. And that's kind of why I've kept it in-house, because I think I have a specific way of cooking that my readers like, or that they expect. So that's definitely why I continue doing the recipe development. But then another part is like, it needs to work. Like, it needs to be a recipe that people are confident is going to work. And so that's why, like, as a food blogger, you have to develop recipes that you know are going to work in most kitchens. So yeah, it's definitely, that's a huge part of it. And yeah, and then I think also as we get into this age of like AI, where anyone can like put a chocolate chip cookie recipe on their site that could be AI generated with stock photos, I think it's really important to have like these experiences as you're cooking, where you can say like, I tried it like this and it didn't work. So if you see it get to this point, like you should do this, or, you know, like you can have like firsthand experience making it and telling people that you, a real person in your real kitchen, have made it. So I think that's kind of like a huge part of sort of future-proofing the site against like potentials for AI or people who haven't actually made recipes, who are just using stock photos.
How do you, I mean, I realize this is decades of experience, but from a high level, like how do you come up with recipes that people are going to be interested in? We come at this so much, at least the listeners will understand from like an SEO standpoint. And it's like, well, you know, like there's a garbanzo bean salad recipe that's a good keyword. So let's, you know, but you probably come about it from another standpoint because you have this background and you have this training and you have this education. And how do you come up with these ideas?
Yeah, it's definitely like both prongs of that. Like the one prong is like, I understand food and how flavors work together, but then also like the SEO aspect really plays into it too. So it's kind of like this interesting balance of like, is it something people want like or are expecting from Google, and does it taste good? So it kind of ties in like wanting to build up these clusters. So if I have a chickpea salad, like, and I also want to build up my like Greek yogurt cluster, like I might make like a chickpea salad with like a Greek yogurt dressing thing. So it's definitely like tying in all these different aspects of it. But a huge part of it is when people go to Google, are you giving them what they're expecting? So I'll often go to Google and see like, what are people expecting from a chickpea salad? Like, are they expecting it to be creamy? Are they expecting it to have lettuce? Are they expecting it to be like, you know, you want to see like, because Google is showing like what people are expecting. And then I'll create my own based on like sort of like the core values of Live, Eat, Learn. So like usually healthy-ish and super simple with like minimal ingredients. So yeah.
Good. Man. I sounds like a puzzle that you got to piece together.
Yeah, it kind of is, but it's fun.
Yeah. It would be enjoyable to try to, you know, match all that together.
Yeah.
Let's see. You do custom photos and video for every single post. Do you have experience in media before this? Did you determine you just had to get good at it? I mean, how did you come about something that for a lot of people is overwhelming and complicated?
Yeah, no, it is overwhelming. And it's definitely a learning curve. I did have experience as a photographer before. But then when I went to like start the food blog, in the similar way that I had no idea how to cook, I had no idea how to take photos of food. So while I knew how to take photos of like people and do portraits and stuff, I was terrible at food photography. And so that's been a huge learning curve. And I've taken courses to just give me some tips and pointers. And then video also, like I have a long way to go, but it's just learning and trying things. And I feel like half the time it's just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. But yeah.
Ex-pro photographer here. And so I come at it with photography. For me is easy, but you know, it's so difficult for a lot of people, and it's so important in the food space. Like there's some spaces where it's just so important, and you know, if you have a blog on crypto, I don't know, probably not as important. But if you're blogging about, if you're writing about food, I can imagine how important it is. Let's slide into the conversation of expertise of EEAT. Now, this wasn't on our agenda, so I'm springing this on you, but. You know, you have obvious expertise in this with your background and your schooling. A lot of people are struggling to try to find a way to show expertise when maybe they don't have that, but you have that. How are you showcasing that through your website, both just from a user standpoint, like helping users understand that you have this background and experience, but also, you know, for Google, like trying to ensure that Google understands that you have this experience and expertise?
Yeah. Well, so I've sort of intentionally been going through and doing this as I update posts. So I really fleshed out the whole about page with like very specific like accolades, like where I got my degrees from, like how I developed the recipes, like the people that are on my team. Like I really make it clear like what's behind these recipes and these posts. And then I'll go through, and if I have a post that I really want to drive home that like I know this, like I know the nutrition, I know like the science behind it, I'll link to the about page with anchor text that's very specific. So like I'll say like I'm putting on my nutritionist brain today, and then like I'll link to like nutritionist about page. So Google very clearly understands Sarah Bond from Live Eat Learn like studied nutrition. She has these degrees. So I've been doing that a little bit. It's kind of hard to work in sometimes like without sounding like overboard, but I've been doing that a bit. And then as I get into video, I won't do like the whole video of me like making it. I'll have usually like hands and pans is what we'll call it like in the food blogging world, but I'll usually do like the bite shot at the end. And so in like the YouTube or whatever, I'll have like the picture of me holding the food. So it's like very obvious that I, the founder of Live Eat Learn, am making this recipe, like I'm eating it. So people are really putting that face to the name also.
Hey, just a quick break. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Just a quick reminder that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Now, I've got a short clip from Ferry with Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
What a crazy campaign. How to Sleep on Your Back. This campaign got us links in Huffington Post, Glamour magazine, Mirror, and lots of other great news publications. Let me show you how we've done it. It was so simple. Our sleep client provided us with expert commentary about how to train yourself to fall asleep on your back. They also gave advice on why it's best to sleep on your back. Once we've had this information, we went to Muckrack and searched for journalists that consistently write about sleep and well-being. We've sent these journalists the advice provided by the client, and within 1 day the links started flowing in. Glamour magazine, a DR81 website, picked it up. Huffington Post, DR88, Mirror UK, DR90. A massive avalanche of links blasted through our client's website with this simple yet effective campaign about how to sleep on your back. I hope this inspires, and I hope you'll use this technique to land massive links to your or your client's website.
Like what you just heard and are looking for similar link building PR campaigns for your website? Just go to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. The process for onboarding writers beside yourself. You talked about how you have other writers who write a lot of the informational content.
Yeah.
How do you ensure, it's kind of a classic question, but how do you bring them on? Yeah. What sort of systems do you have in place? How do you make sure, like how involved are you in those articles? And, how do you ensure that these articles are kind of up to the Live, Eat, Learn status that you want?
I don't know if I'm like the best answer for this because I really keep my team pretty small because I don't like branching out to new people and like training new people. So I've probably rotated through like 6 or 7 writers before, and I've kind of landed on a few that I just really like. And I found them like in Facebook groups. I'll just put a job listing out and then have like a Google form where I'll have someone like write me an intro paragraph for this recipe. And then I think on the last job op I did, I had them just fix like minor errors in a paragraph, like for style. So I could just see like how much they paid attention to detail, and then like they were able to mimic my voice. So I found 4 now that I just really like how they work. They're quick. They can mimic my voice pretty well. And so, yeah, keep a pretty small team, but
that's still pretty good. 4 is a good amount to manage,
Yeah.
How many new articles are you guys trying to publish a week now at this point?
So I'm doing 2 new recipes, and that's all me. I have a couple, and they do photography and videography for me for like the how-to posts. And so those posts are like meant to sort of bring up the recipes. They'll do like how to cut asparagus, how to freeze chickpeas, how to boil black beans or whatever. So like really basic ones that I don't think I need to have like my heart and soul in it because it's so basic. They'll do those once a week. And then I have writers doing like 4 to 6 informational posts per week.
Okay. Let's talk about article updating. I mean, at 1,300 posts now, and a website that 2015, so 8 years old. I mean, do you touch those old articles? You kind of mentioned you had to because some of them are needing update. But, do you have a process for updating old content?
Yeah, so I update a lot. I try to update like 10 posts a day, but they're very light touches.
Okay.
So
I was about to say, because 10 is a lot if you're going full bore on it. So, yeah, okay. Yeah. So they're kind of more light updates.
Yeah, it's really like the quick ones that I'm going for right now on this pass through. So one thing that I've been doing recently has been retitling, and that's been like such a small change that's just made such big impacts on the traffic. So like my shining example of this is my mango smoothie recipe. So I have a mango smoothie recipe, and it was on the first page of Google, but it was getting very few clicks. And so when we went into like just Google the search page, and you search for mango smoothie, you can see there's just this blanket of mango smoothies, and all the titles look the same, and nothing stood out from each other. So I changed mine from mango smoothie recipe to quick 3-ingredient mango smoothie. That's the only change I made. I didn't change anything else except the title. And so in February, when I made this change, I was getting 8 clicks per day, I think, and like a 0.9% click-through rate. And today that post gets 500 clicks per day and has a 10% click-through rate. So solely from the title, it's made just a huge impact. And so I've sort of been trying to replicate this as I go through posts, just like looking at the title and thinking, is this blending into this blanket of titles, or is it standing out? And if it doesn't stand out, how can I make it stand out?
That is brilliant. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it, but that probably took you 15 seconds.
Yeah. And I will say that find was not mine. So I work very closely with Foodie Digital. They do like my WordPress management and SEO support. So they found that and just suggested I change the title. And it's just been a crazy uptick that post has seen. So I've taken that sort of pillar and just gone with it for all the posts.
For all of them. Do you have any, do you have like a science behind it? Do you go into Google Search Console and compare A, before you made a change, B, after you made a change, measure it for a period of time? Do you go by, traffic, and I'm only going to go after posts that have a lot of traffic, or I'm only going after posts that don't have much traffic,
Yeah. So I went into Search Console and I went to the, what's it called? I think it's like the search results. And then I selected total clicks, total impressions, and total click-through rate for the last 16 months, and then just downloaded all of that. And then I sorted that sheet by impressions. So you have the highest impressions, and then you can really go through and just see, is the click-through rate up to par or not? So if it was like below a 1% click-through rate, then I would just go in and see, how could I improve that click-through rate? Because the content's already there. It's like, how can I get people to that content?
Yeah. What are some other, if you don't mind me asking, like you took the title mango smoothie and you added quick 3-ingredient to the front of it. Are there any other, kind of trending winners or other little things you can do just to keep people's mind kind of spinning about?
Yeah. So I definitely avoid words like the best, or like words that are too big for what the recipe is, unless it truly has like 600 5-star reviews. So I'll try to go for like time, because people are always crunched for time. If it's low ingredients, I'll talk about the amount of ingredients. If it has a certain cooking method, that could be something worth highlighting. But then also never sort of straying from what the recipe actually is, because you don't want someone to like click on the recipe, get into it, and then realize like, oh, this is a vegan thing. I didn't want vegan. They click back to Google, because like that pogo sticking is not something, it's not a signal that you want to send to Google. So I try to be very upfront about what the recipe is. But then, using sort of these like descriptive words to draw people in. You could talk about like the star reviews. Like if it gets a lot of reviews, you could say like fan favorite or highly rated, or
I think it's really smart what you're doing, because you understand your niche and the pain points, right? And in marketing, we always talk about like, what are the pain points, and lean into solving a problem that, solves their pain points. And if it only speaks to like getting into your niche, knowing the problems that people have. And, in this case, the example we're using, you hit on 2 of them. First off, it's a quick mango smoothie recipe. And second off, it's a 3-ingredient, which you said, like time and low number of ingredients. Those are kind of the first 2 you stated. But that wouldn't work if people weren't in a hurry and you didn't know that. And it wouldn't work if people didn't care about how many ingredients were used.
Yeah. Yeah. So really thinking about like what problem is this post solving, and how can I work that into the title without being like too wordy? But it's part of the puzzle.
Any other things you're doing to update content? Are you just sticking with titles and just optimizing titles at this point? Or are there any other things you're doing to work on them? So as I go through and retitle, slowly I've also been doing things to sort of add
make the post more sticky and engaging to people once they're in. So like the retitling really brings people in, but then once they're in, how can I keep them in the post? So I do this sort of in two ways. The first is social proof. So I'll go through the comments and I'll find like a really nice 5-star review someone left me. And then I'll just literally copy it and paste it at the top of the post. So when someone's clicked in, they see the hero image. They can also see at that same time a review from a real person who thought that the recipe was good enough that they should write a review online. So that really helps sort of prove to people that this recipe works, because there's nothing worse than making a recipe and it doesn't work. And I see my job as a food blogger is to make people 100% confident that this recipe will work. And so social proof is a huge part of that. But then also just showing people how to make the recipe. So I'll go in and I'll add step-by-step photos. If I haven't added them to the recipe card, I'll add those in. And then if there's a video, I'll add that in. So just really making the post like as engaging as possible to keep people there and convince them that they should make it.
Do you do any SEO components when you're updating the content, whether it's rewriting some of it, removing some of the article, keyword density, looking at competitors and what they have and what you don't have? Everything you've described so far is great. It's all focused seemingly, you know, on kind of user metrics, right? On what's going to be better for the user. Do you bring any of the SEO side into it?
Yeah, definitely. So on my day-to-day, like going through the 10 posts, I don't typically go that deep into it. Just because right now on this like first pass, I'm trying to just get those huge quick wins. But then, like I said, I work with Foodie Digital pretty closely, and they've really been teaching me sort of how to go through and like improve these articles for SEO. So I'll do like 1 or 2 of those a month, just with a little handholding from Foodie Digital. And that's where we'll like rewrite that first paragraph to sort of make it more descriptive, sort of fit in more of those keywords, and then answer even more questions that might not be answered yet.
Got it.
Yeah.
I imagine those take a little longer to do.
Yeah, those take like an hour each. So it's like, I'd rather just get all these quick wins done first. And then with the ones that are really like on the verge of like first page of Google or first 3 spots, with those ones, then I'll put more time into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. 1 minute versus 1 hour. It's got to have the payoff.
Yeah.
So transitioning a bit, you over time have amassed quite a good number of backlinks. You know, if you pull that site up in like an Ahrefs or something like that, like you got a lot of really, really awesome backlinks. What has been your backlink strategy over the years?
I don't really have one.
I had a feeling you might say that.
Yeah, I don't have an intentional one. Sort of the way I see it is that, especially with recipe sites, being number 1 or 2 in Google is in a way a backlink strategy, because if someone's looking for a recipe to add to their roundup, or if BuzzFeed's looking for something, like they're going to pick one of those top 2 or 3. So in a way, that's just been my strategy. Yeah, nothing super intentional though.
What do you talked on that, because I think that's maybe more trending in the food space than other spaces, in that if you rank number 1, because there's so many roundup type posts, you get a lot of backlinks. Like, talk about that. What is there something besides ranking number 1 that makes your post attractive to be featured in like Good Housekeeping, or, you know, all these different roundups that get done in the food space? And are you ever trying to create recipes that, yes, rank number 1, but also make them more attractive?
That's a tough one. I think people do choose roundups for other reasons. Like, I think someone you might not know might look on Google for a recipe and then find you as number 1 and include you. But I've also found that like within like Facebook groups, people are looking for recipes for roundups, and they'll find ones that have like something different about them, which obviously Google doesn't always want. Like, people on Google don't want something that's like different or weird. But I feel like on like the Facebook groups, if people are asking for roundup items, that might be the case. But then I think also I found a lot of people will include my recipes and roundups just solely because of photography style. Mine's like very bright with like a lot of colors. And so I found that some brands will include my recipes just because it matches their brand. So it's kind of hard to say like why anyone chooses anything for a roundup. But yeah, my strategy really has just been to put out great content and then hope that people link to it.
There it is. The other thing I noticed as I scroll through your site is an email list featured top of the homepage and all the articles, sidebar. What's your email list? Like, how important is it? And maybe just talk through what's going on with that.
Yeah. It's a huge part of what I do. It really, in my eyes, the email list is a way to sort of mitigate any risk from SEO changes, but it's also a way that I can build a relationship with readers and get them really comfortable with my name, my face, like knowing me and knowing my recipes. So I have like a very basic email opt-in, just like what you're probably seeing on the header of the site. But then also for each of these like topic clusters I built out, I'll make like a specific email sequence related to that cluster. So if someone's on one of my air fryer recipes, they're going to get an opt-in, like a subscribe box, asking them if they want to join my air fryer sequence. And that's just like 5 days of like air fryer secrets or something, I think I call it. So really getting people in and then getting them comfortable with getting emails from me, basically. And then I'm pretty aggressive with sending emails. Once they go through like that welcome sequence, which is like every day for 5 days, they'll go into a forever sequence, which is they'll end up getting about 4 emails from me per week, with different seasonal things, evergreen things. And I've tried to make that all automated. So starting in like 6 months, once I've like built it all out, it should be completely automated and I won't have to do anything.
That's tricky with the seasonal stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So they'll get like 2 evergreen emails from me, and that's just a forever sequence. And that's stuff that could be cooked any time of year. But then I'll also send every Saturday a broadcast. So I use ConvertKit. So like a broadcast is one that you like make and just send once. Once I send the broadcast that's like hyper relevant to the season, like 4th of July or Christmas or whatever, I'll copy the link to the broadcast report and I'll save it. So that time next year, I can just go back in, duplicate that broadcast, and then send it again. So I'm still building that out. I'm on like the 6th month of it. So in 6 more months, all the broadcasts will be done forever.
Wow. Okay. That's a good strategy for people listening.
Yeah.
What's your, what's the purpose of the email newsletter and all the content you're publishing? Because it's got to be a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, traffic is definitely a huge part of it. Just getting people back to those recipes, reminding them of me, like keeping me top of mind, my recipes top of mind. I sell digital products through them also. And so that's really the main way that I sell my ebooks and digital products. And then, I think just sort of building that loyal audience that when they're searching on Google or looking on Instagram, that when they see Live, Eat, Learn or one of my niche sites, they'll come to that one because they know it and they trust it.
Yep. Yeah. You mentioned you have some digital products. I think you mentioned at the outset that it's not a big driver of the revenue. What are your plans for that? Are you going to try to make it a larger part of the revenue, or is it just kind of there? You tried it, is what it is. I'm curious how much you're going to look into expanding that. Yeah,
I've thought about it. So they do decently well. One is it's like a meal plan that does really well around like January. So usually I'll do like a hard push around January and people are changing their diets. And then one is so the kombucha recipe that like went viral when I was a baby blogger. That's why I kind of started the kombucha site, because of that, like all the questions I was getting about brewing kombucha. And so I created an ebook, which was just basically every article I had written about kombucha put into like a nicely formatted ebook. And so that's just on a pay what you want model. So really the purpose of that is just if people are really happy with the content, I found that people just want to compensate me in some way. So that's really there just for that purpose, to give people an outlet to send a tip basically if they want to. So no big plans really for those, especially with the momentum I have with SEO. I think if that momentum were to waver a little bit, I might start focusing more on the products, but for now they're just there.
Yeah. Let's you mentioned it. Perfect transition. It was next on my list. Let's talk about the other 2 sites you have. Am I saying it right? Brew Boost and Bone Appetit. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I've actually wrote them on my notes here phonetically, and because I was practicing and messing up.
I should probably write the phonetic
podcast.
spelling on them. Yeah.
That's fine. It's because I'm an uneducated individual here when it comes to pronouncing things. I mean, the big question that every website owner tends to have is when to continue investing in their site that's succeeding versus starting a second project, right? And you did that in, I think I wrote down 2019 or 2020, so a while ago. What was the impetus, and how do you justify continuing to put time into 3 sites versus just one? And I don't mean that accusatorily. I really actually mean that's like a question we all wrestle with probably constantly, right?
Yeah. No, it's a question I have constantly of myself too. Yeah. No, they both definitely they started for different reasons. So the kombucha one really started because I was just getting so many questions about brewing kombucha because there's so much to know about it more than just this basic recipe, which was all I had on Live, Eat, Learn at the time. So starting the website was really just like having a place to send people who are sending me emails every day. Instead of having to write the answer in the email, I could just say, here's the article. So a lot of it was just like taking all the emails I had written people and putting them into articles. So that site only has about 80 articles, and I'll put one new post on there a week or every other week. So I don't put a ton of content on there. But yeah, that's really the purpose that one is serving, is just very technical kombucha information, basically. And then Bon Appetit was just like a passion project. I got a dog and then was cooking her a lot of recipes. I was like, well, it'd be fun if I could post some of these and make her a tax write-off.
There you go. Yeah.
So that one's been slow growing as well, but it's just like kind of a fun creative outlet away from Live, Eat, Learn to sort of like work different muscles in a way. Yeah.
Good. Nope. Yeah. No real wrong answer there, right? Like for the people who choose to focus and stay focused on one project that's succeeding, there's so many reasons. For the people who shift focuses and are able to kind of divide and conquer in an effective way, that's a good process. But the wrestling is always there in our minds, is it not?
Yeah, it is difficult. And I have had like recommendations from people that I should combine a lot of the content on the sites, like all to Live, Eat, Learn. But a lot of it's also, I feel like, risk mitigation, that I can not have all my eggs in this one Live, Eat, Learn basket. Or if I ever wanted to sell one of the niche sites, I could sell it and like not lose everything I built on Live, Eat, Learn. So yeah, I like them, but they are, it's interesting to wrestle with how much energy do you put into this new thing that you're building versus like the thing that works. And that's always difficult.
You are like a podcast host dream. You make all my transitions happen for me perfectly. My next question was, what are the future plans? Would you consider selling or growing or, there's so many ways you could go with this. And Live, Eat, Learn certainly is doing so well. It's been around for a long time. But where are you going in the future with these sites?
Yeah. Onward and upward. No, I've had some offers for Live, Eat, Learn before, but I just don't think now's the time to sell. It's just because I'm loving doing it so much. I'm like seeing that momentum, and it's just, I feel like we've really found like a nice cadence of, and like a nice sort of place where we really understand the content that the people need and that we want to publish. So, there's nothing too exciting except just continuing to publish, a bunch and trying to stay relevant on the socials and staying ahead of whatever happens with AI and the loss of third-party cookies and all the scary things that are coming down the pipeline. But just gonna keep going.
Let me kind of close us out then with this question. So along those lines, what does the future look like on a more tactical level? How do you determine the next topics to go after? How do you, when you're a site that's 1,300 posts, that has all this authority, you're going to continue on the same path forward with it? You know that it's going to involve this clustering of whether it's an ingredient or a topic, video, photo. Like, I'm just trying to think, how do you pick the next set of topics? What research do you do? How do you determine what's next in terms of a tactical approach for the blog?
Yeah. Well, I'm not really seeing the end of the posts that I could write to really fill out these categories, especially like within my niche, like vegetarian food. There's still so much that I haven't done that I have years of content that I could still publish, I think. So yeah, I would say once I start reaching like the bottom of the barrel, I might start getting nervous. But at the moment now, like there's just so much still to be done to sort of flesh out my idea of what a complete vegetarian food blog would look like. So yeah, really just trying to get to that goal of like making it the most fully fleshed out thing that it could be.
Sarah, where can people follow along with you? I mean, obviously Live, Eat, Learn. Is that a good place to keep up with you? Are there other places that you're active?
Yeah, I'm pretty much active on all social as Live, Eat, Learn. The niche sites don't have socials, but it's Brew Booch and Bon Appetit. And then, you can join my email list if you want to get a lot of emails with really good food.
For a week, it sounds like.
Yep.
Perfect. That's good. Sarah, thanks so much for coming on. I will link to that in the show notes. I'll also link to the article that you have on nichepursuits.com about a lot of the same things we talked about, although I would like to say we went into more depth here. But there's some cool stats and some cool graphs that are on that article too. So if you want to go kind of see some of the more nitty gritty about the details behind your revenue and some of those things, I'll include a link there. Thanks for coming on board. This is really great. We haven't done one on the food niche in a while, so it's really good to hear how you've grown Live, Eat, Learn, your other sites. Congratulations on your success.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
This campaign got us big links in websites such as Lifehacker, Wales Online, Daily Record, and about 20 other news websites. Let me show you how we've done it. We knew that people will be flying a lot this summer, and we knew that journalists will be writing about this topic a lot. So, on behalf of our client, we put together a nice guide about how to fall asleep on the plane. Then we use MuckRack to find journalists who write about travel. Then we put our advice in a nice email and send the tips to the journalists. Within just a few days, the links started landing, securing our client natural placements in really big websites, just like this, and this. This is a great example about how you can leverage seasonal trends to earn links to a website. Anticipate what journalists want to write about at all times and give them the stories that they need. They will reward you with some great, juicy links. I hope this is helpful. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Just a final reminder that it was brought to you by Search Intelligence. And if you're looking for link building PR campaigns for your website, just head over to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. Cheers.